How much is it going to take? How much for you to sign the damn divorce papers? There he was, my husband, flanked by his young mistress, demanding a divorce after I'd helped him build a blockbuster restaurant in my own mother's building. He must have thought he was sitting on a throne of cash. But he was the only one who didn't know he was actually perched on a bed of nails. It was so pathetic, I could have cried from laughter. I don't want a dime, I told them. You two go ahead. Live your best life. I've prepared a little gift for you that you'll never see coming. The time it took to turn my husband from a self-proclaimed king into a penniless wreck in the very restaurant my mother built with her blood, sweat, and tears? Exactly 5 minutes. The spectacular downfall of a broke husband and his mistress in just 5 minutes. It starts now. And before we begin, please hit that like button. May your day be filled with blessings. As I start this story, a heaviness settles in my chest. Looking back on my life, I see how foolish I was, and in some ways, how pitiful. Growing up, I was always alone. My father passed away before I even started elementary school, leaving behind nothing but a run-down 3-story commercial building in an old part of the city. To protect that building and raise me, my mother lived a life of relentless toil. She would leave before the morning stars faded and wouldn't return until long after sunset. When I came home from school, I was greeted only by an empty house and a chilling silence. Other kids talked about coming home to the smell of their mom's cooking, but I was always the one putting a pot of water on the stove to boil instant noodles for myself. Staring into the steam rising from that bubbling pot, I made a promise to myself. When I grew up, I would never live such a lonely life. I didn't care about money. I just wanted a home where the whole family would gather around the dinner table after work, sharing a simple pot of chili and an evening of conversation. That was my only dream. My mother, however, had a different mantra. Sarah, she'd say, her hands rough from work, looks don't pay the bills. You have to marry a man with a good job and a thick wallet. You don't want to end up struggling like me. Every time I saw the calloused knuckles on her hands, my heart ached. But the emptiness deep inside me couldn't be filled with money. All I craved was a kind word, a gentle look. Then, well into my 30s, I met him through a mutual friend. The first time we met, he had this disarmingly simple, kind smile. The friend who set us up must have tipped him off about my ideal type, because he said all the right things, like he was reading from a prepared script. Sarah, he said, my dream isn't anything grand. I just want to come home from work to a meal my wife cooked, and on the weekends, take the kids to the park for some cotton candy. That's my life's goal. Hearing that, I felt my heart drop. Finally, I thought, I've met someone who shares my dream. When he pointed at some children playing nearby, his eyes sparkling, I was completely convinced he was my destiny. When we get married, he said, let's have adorable kids just like them. I promise you, Sarah, you'll never have to lift a finger. Thinking back on it now, it's so absurd I have to laugh. I was completely blind to the thorns hidden beneath his sweet words. The truth was, he was drowning in debt and saw my mother's old building as his ticket out. But I, naive and desperate for affection, fell for his performance hook, line, and sinker. A few months later, I told my mother I'd found someone I wanted to marry. She stared at his photo for a long time, her brow furrowed. He's got shifty eyes, she declared. Something about him doesn't look right, not a single ounce of ambition in that face. What does he do? He works an office job, Mom. He's hardworking and kind. Most importantly, he's a family man. Kind? Does kind put food on the table? I told you time and time again to find someone with money. I can't bear to see you suffer. My mother's opposition was stronger than I expected, but I didn't back down. I had spent my entire life as the good, obedient daughter, always following her lead. But this time, I couldn't give up. I ended up on my knees, sobbing and begging her. Mom, I was always alone as a kid. Do you know how lonely it was, coming home to a dark, empty house every day? I don't need money. I just want to live a simple, happy life with someone who loves and cherishes me. Please, just give us your blessing. My tears finally broke her. With a long sigh, she turned her head away. It was true what they say. No parent can win against their child. Getting her approval was one mountain, but another one was waiting, my future mother-in-law. At the first family meeting, she looked me up and down with a sneer. An orphan. I wonder if she had any proper upbringing. My son is so handsome. There was a line of women waiting for him. You're a lucky girl, you know? Not every family would welcome a daughter-in-law raised by a single mother. I was speechless, utterly flabbergasted. But the man who would become my husband squeezed my hand tightly under the table, giving me a look that said, "Just bear with it." I held on to the comfort of that touch and swallowed my anger. I told myself that the initial struggles with in-laws were just part of the process, that things would get better. I had no idea I was walking straight into hell. Our newlywed life began in a small rental apartment in a rundown complex. My husband had no savings to speak of, and his family didn't contribute a single cent. Still, I was happy. Seeing him come home from work, roll up his sleeves, and cook a pot of chili for us, that image of his back felt so strong and reliable. "Hey, babe, taste this. How is it? Amazing, right?" he'd say, feeding me a spoonful from the ladle. In those moments, I felt like I had everything in the world. Our apartment was small, and our bank account was light, but I believed that as long as we had each other, we'd be fine. But that happiness didn't last. A year into our marriage, we still hadn't conceived. Bowing to my mother-in-law's constant nagging, we went to a clinic. The day we went for the results, the doctor had a strange expression. "The results are a bit unexpected," he said gently. "Your husband's sperm motility is significantly low. Natural conception might be very difficult." It was a shock, but I thought we could overcome it with effort. However, as soon as we left the doctor's office, my husband grabbed my shoulders, his face serious. "Hey, let's keep this between us. Don't tell my mom. She'd have a heart attack if she knew. Let's just say you're a little high-strung, and that's why it's not happening. Okay?" I was too stunned to speak, but seeing his defeated expression, my heart softened again. He's a proud man, I thought. This must be hard for him. So I nodded. I never imagined that nod would be like handing him the axe to chop off my own feet. From that day on, my mother-in-law's abuse escalated. At every holiday and family gathering, she would publicly humiliate me. "Do you know what the worst sin for a wife is?" she'd announce at the Thanksgiving dinner table. "Being barren. If the soil is bad, how can you expect a seed to sprout?" I chose the wrong daughter-in-law, and now my precious son's family line is going to end. Her words felt like daggers in my heart, but my husband just sat there, silent as a mouse. Worse, when we got home, he'd take his frustration out on me. "God, if mom says something, can't you just play along and try to smooth things over? You sit there with a sour face, and it just makes her worse. It's because you're so stressed out that we can't have a baby." The hypocrisy was astounding. I was so angry I thought I would explode, but I just shut my mouth. What was the point of fighting? I knew he would just twist it around and make me the bad guy. So I suffered in silence, my spirit slowly eroding. Then one day, my husband came home looking utterly defeated. His company was downsizing, and he was on the list. "Honey, I got laid off," he mumbled. "What are we going to do?" The world felt like it was crumbling, but I took his hand and tried to comfort him. "It's okay. You're a hard worker. You'll find another job in no time. Don't worry too much." After that, he drifted from one odd job to another, unable to find stable work. I kept my full-time job, and we barely scraped by. One night, he went out to meet an old friend and came back late. But his expression was completely different from when he left. His eyes were wide and intense, like he was possessed. "Babe, I found it. A golden opportunity. My buddy is making a killing in the restaurant business, and he said I should do it too. You know I can cook. This is a sure thing," he slurred, spitting with excitement. A chill ran down my spine. He was always so easily swayed, and a wave of anxiety washed over me. A restaurant, all of a sudden? We don't have any savings. Wouldn't it be better to look for a stable job? When I gently tried to reason with him, he scowled and raised his voice. "Your husband finally finds the courage to do something, and instead of cheering me on, you shoot it down? You know how good my cooking is. This is a guaranteed success. And the money, we can just borrow some from your mom. Her building's first floor is empty, right?" I couldn't believe my ears. What was he saying? He knew perfectly well what that building meant to my mother, how she'd fought to keep it, and he dared to covet it. What? Mom's building? Absolutely not. You know how she feels about that place. Ugh, you're so rigid. I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking her to invest. I'll pay her back with interest when I succeed. You want me to spend the rest of my life taking orders from someone else? Just trust me this one time. I'm really confident about this. He went from pleading, to getting angry, to putting on a one-man show. His eyes were already burning with greed. What I had hoped was just a drunken rant soon became a reality. but it was a struggle from the start. The prime location in a busy downtown area he had boasted about was completely out of our reach. We couldn't even afford the security deposit, let alone the goodwill money. Faced with this harsh reality, my husband sulked for days before he started giving me the side eye again. "Honey," he said, his voice deflated, "no matter how I look at it, there's no way we can do this with the money we have. We're already maxed out on loans." His gaze drifted, inevitably, toward my mother's old three-story building. It was our only hope. I felt so ashamed I could barely lift my head when we went to see my mother. But surprisingly, she was more than willing. In fact, it was as if she was offering us her very heart. "All right," she said, "if you're going to do it right. My first floor is empty, so you can start there. Don't worry about a security deposit. And you only have to pay half the rent until you get on your feet. Do you have enough for the renovations? If you're short, I'll chip in with my savings. Don't lose your nerve." Tears welled up in my eyes at her incredible generosity. The money she'd painstakingly saved over a lifetime of working in flea markets, and she was willing to give it all up to help her son-in-law succeed. My husband's face broke into a huge grin. "Mom, I swear, I'm going to make it big, and you'll live like a queen. You trust your son-in-law, right?" He joked. At that moment, I didn't resent him. I thought, he's just doing this so our family can have a better life. We decided on a single menu item: classic American beef stew. My husband boasted that he'd learned a secret recipe from the chef of a famous restaurant. But I was worried. Our neighborhood was old, filled with seniors who had very particular tastes. As opening day approached, my mother was a whirlwind of activity. "Sarah, the stew is important, but for a place like this, the side dishes are everything. If the cornbread is bad, you'll lose all your customers. I'll make fresh batches of cheddar jalapeno cornbread every morning, so you just worry about the register." And so began my mother's ordeal. Every morning at 4 a.m., she'd be up, mixing batter and grating cheese. Even though she was going to physical therapy for a herniated disc, she'd say, "My son-in-law has to succeed for my daughter to live comfortably," all while hauling heavy trays of cornbread, the smell of pain, relief cream clinging to her. For the first month, business was dead. The building was old and didn't stand out, and the younger crowd flocked to the new chain restaurants nearby. My husband grew anxious, chain-smoking and blaming everything else. "It's this old building. The decor is so dated. That's why no one's coming." He'd complain, blaming the building, blaming my mother. "Hey, tell your mom to get the exterior repainted. It's so gloomy. Who'd have an appetite here?" My stomach churned every time he said it, but I held my tongue. Then, a miracle happened, and it came from an unexpected place. Word of mouth began to spread among the few customers we had. "Hey, the cornbread at that place is a work of art. You haven't lived until you've dunked it in the stew. It's addictive, I'm telling you. That grandma's got a magic touch." One by one, the customers started coming. 3 months later, a line would form outside the door during lunch hour, stretching 100 yards down the block. It was an unbelievable sight. The alley in front of our old building was packed with people waiting for a bowl of beef stew. It was pure chaos. Within 6 months, our restaurant had become the undisputed hot spot in the neighborhood, and even the city. Cash was literally pouring in. The register drawer would get so full we'd have to empty it halfway through a shift. Every time we tallied the day's earnings, my husband and I would just stare at each other, speechless. "See? What did I tell you? My recipe worked. Damn, I must be a genius." It took them a while, but people finally recognized my talent. He would crow. The truth was, most customers were saying, "Can we get some more cornbread, please? And, is there any extra cornbread to go?" They were all there for my mother's creation, but my husband seemed oblivious. Or rather, he didn't want to know. He wanted to take all the credit. "Honey, your stew is great, but I think a lot of the customers love Mom's cornbread too. We should give her a generous bonus," I suggested once. He just scoffed. "Please, it's just cornbread. The main event is the stew. My secret recipe is a masterpiece. That's why we're a success. Your mom's cornbread is just a garnish." That's when he started to change. Once he got a taste of money, the look in his eyes was different. He conveniently forgot about the debts he'd promised to pay off and started coming home with shopping bags from high-end department stores. "Look at this. The owner has to dress well. It commands respect from the customers. You should dress up a bit too. Stop looking so frumpy." Meanwhile, He'd show up to the restaurant in t-shirts with huge designer logos and a flashy gold watch on his wrist. He even started leaving brochures for foreign luxury cars on the dining table for me to see. Honey, let's pay off our debts first. We still owe Mom, too. Ugh, stop being such a cheapskate. When you're making this much, you can afford to spend a little on your image. And your mom's money? We can pay her back in one lump sum when we expand the business. She helped her daughter's place out. It's not like she's in a hurry, right? His arrogance grew by the day. At first, he would bow and scrape in front of my mother, saying, "It's all thanks to you, Mom." But soon, he was bad-mouthing her behind her back. Why does your mom keep coming into the kitchen? Does she have no concept of health codes? This building is old enough as it is. With her coming and going, it lowers the tone of the place. Tell her to just make the cornbread and send it over. Hearing that, my blood boiled. Have you lost your mind? Mom breaks her back every morning making that cornbread, and you're not even grateful? Lowers the tone? Who do you think you are? Calling yourself an owner. When I yelled at him, he just yelled back louder. Who do I think I am? It's my skill. And don't you talk to your husband like that. I'm a respected business owner now. Don't embarrass me in front of the staff. I was floored. I couldn't believe money could make a person so ugly. But the restaurant was so busy, we didn't even have time to fight. I felt like I needed 10 bodies to keep up. I was running around waiting tables, managing the register, and helping in the kitchen. My mother was working herself to the bone making the cornbread. Eventually, we decided to hire more staff. I suggested we find some hardworking, experienced women, but my husband flatly refused. Are you kidding? That'll make the place look so drab. For the front of the house, you need someone young and bubbly. That's what the male customers like, and it improves table turnover. He insisted on conducting the interviews himself. The first person he decided to interview was her, Jessica. She was 27, looked fresh out of college, but there was a knowing, calculated look in her eyes. I'll never forget the day she first walked into the restaurant. She was wearing a short skirt and a tight-fitting sweater, and every man in the place turned to stare. My husband's smile was so wide it looked like it would split his face. "Wow, Jessica, you're even more beautiful in person. You're going to be the star of our restaurant, haha." And she was no amateur. She immediately started flirting, her voice dripping with sweetness. "Mr. Miller, I'm a really hard worker, but I was so surprised at how young you are. I could almost call you by your first name." At that, my husband was putty in her hands. "Ha, well, I don't mind. Make yourself comfortable." They laughed and chatted as if I wasn't even there, standing right next to them. It left a sour taste in my mouth, but I brushed it off. What could possibly happen between a boss and a part-time waitress? I thought. But my misfortune had already taken root, deep and unseen. Jessica was a terrible waitress. She'd show up with long, manicured nails and was constantly breaking dishes. But my husband never got mad. "Oh, Jessica, are you okay? Did you hurt your hand? You have to be careful." He'd fuss. This was the same man who would scream at me to pay attention if I dropped a spoon. What was worse was her attitude. When a customer called for her, she'd pretend not to hear, busy on her phone. But the second my husband appeared, she'd transform, batting her eyelashes. "Oh, Kevin, this is too heavy for me. Can you help?" And he would come running. The older women in the kitchen would whisper amongst themselves, shaking their heads. "That little fox is ruining the atmosphere here. The boss has that look in his eyes. You'd better keep a close watch on him, ma'am." Even then, I wanted to believe in my husband. No, I had to believe in him. We had just started to become successful. I didn't want to shatter that happiness. But a woman's intuition is a powerful thing. The strange vibe in the restaurant, my husband's frequent nights out, the way he never let his phone out of his sight. Even after the warnings from my staff, I tried to ignore it. I thought, surely he wouldn't. Not while I'm right here, watching over the restaurant every day. Not in my own restaurant. But the seed of doubt, once planted, grew uncontrollably. Everything was a red flag, but I chose to close my eyes and cover my ears, repeating, "No way, no way." But as the old saying goes, it's always the things you think are impossible that get you in the end. One afternoon, after the lunch rush had died down, Jessica was sitting at the counter, reapplying her makeup in a compact mirror. The tables were a mess, but she had no intention of cleaning them, too busy perfecting her lipstick. It annoyed me, and I said something. "Jessica, table 3 hasn't been cleared yet. A new customer might come in, please take care of it." Before my words had even settled, My husband shot out of the kitchen as if I'd sounded an air raid siren. He glared at me. Hey, give her a second to breathe, will you? Why do you have to nag her about every little thing? Didn't you see her running around all lunch? Her feet are probably killing her. You can clear it yourself. I was so stunned I couldn't speak. It was ridiculous enough that I, the owner, had to walk on eggshells around a part-time employee, but for my own husband to publicly take her side? Kevin, what are you talking about? She's not working, she's goofing off, and why are you always defending her? Before I could finish, he scowled and shouted, Are you jealous? Is that it? Jealous because she's pretty? Don't you see that our male clientele has increased because of her? We're lucky to have her, and you should be grateful instead of taking your insecurities out on her. You just stay behind the counter and be quiet. Don't ruin the mood. His words, Are you jealous? Stabbed me like a knife. It wasn't just anger at him thinking I was jealous of some young girl. It was the devastating realization of how little he thought of me. I felt like I had seen the absolute bottom of his character. But the most infuriating part was Jessica's reaction. She stood behind my husband, a tiny, triumphant smirk playing on her lips. As soon as he went back into the kitchen, she sauntered over to me and whispered, her voice soft but laced with venom. Ma'am, you have to admit it. You're older, so you're just not with it anymore. There's a reason the boss relies on me. You should learn to read the room. In that moment, I heard something inside me snap. Ma'am? A part-time waitress, getting a paycheck from my business, was calling me ma'am and lecturing me. My hands started to tremble with rage. I wanted to grab her by the hair, but there were still customers in the restaurant, so I had to restrain myself. That day, I made a decision. My intuition was right, and I was going to end this disgusting charade with my own two hands. That evening, about 10 minutes before closing, my husband casually took off his apron. Hey, an old buddy of mine needs to see me. I'm gonna head out. You can handle closing up. Normally, I would have just said okay. But that night was different. My gut, a woman's sixth sense, was screaming at me. Exactly 5 minutes after he left, Jessica packed her bag. I'm going to head out a little early today, too. See you tomorrow. As soon as she was gone, I asked one of the kitchen staff to finish up and slipped out the back door. My heart was pounding like a drum, but I tiptoed after her, staying in the shadows. Instead of heading toward the main road and the bus stop, she turned down a dark, deserted alley. After about 200 yards, I saw it, a familiar car parked at the end of the alley, its hazard lights blinking. Yes, it was the expensive German sedan my husband was so proud of. No, it can't be, I thought, but seeing it with my own eyes made my legs feel like jelly. Jessica looked around, then scurried to the passenger side, opened the door, and chirped loudly. Honey, did you wait long? I missed you so much. Her voice, that sickeningly sweet coo, felt like it was tearing through my eardrums. My husband laughed from inside the car as she got in, and they drove off into the night. I stood there, frozen, watching the taillights disappear. I couldn't even cry. I didn't know if it was from rage, from emptiness, or from the strange sense of liberation that it was all finally out in the open. I couldn't make sense of my own feelings. That night, my husband stumbled in after 3 a.m., dead drunk. Honey, I'm home, he slurred. My buddy. He's having a really tough time. He collapsed onto the bed and passed out. Looking at his sleeping face, any remaining affection I had for him evaporated. With trembling hands, I took his phone from his pocket. As if by some divine intervention, my fingerprint unlocked it on the first try. My fingers shook as I tapped on his messaging app. The chat at the very top had a profile picture of her, winking. As I read through their conversation, I felt the air leave my lungs. I finally understood what it meant to feel your blood run cold. Honey, when are you going to break up with that old hag? I'm sick of being a waitress. I want to be called the owner's wife. Just be patient. Beautiful. I'm going to get the restaurant transferred to my name soon. Really? I'm counting on you, babe. We'll kick that frumpy old woman out and start fresh, just us. Of course. I can't stand the sight of her anyway. It's disgusting how she acts like the owner when she can't even give me a child. I'll get rid of her soon. Just you wait. Can't even give me a child. Disgusting. Those words butchered my heart. After everything I'd done for him, after my mother had worked her ailing body to the bone for him, the feeling went beyond betrayal. I felt a murderous rage. I immediately forwarded the entire conversation to my own phone and took pictures as evidence. Then, I quietly placed the phone back where I'd found it. I didn't sleep a wink that night. Lying next to him, listening to him snore, I felt the urge to smother him with a pillow 1,000 times. But I resisted. He didn't deserve such an easy way out. The pain he'd caused me, the sweat my mother had shed for him, it was all too precious to end so simply. The next morning, I got up as if nothing had happened and made a hearty breakfast. Honey, you must have a hangover. Eat this before you go. Seeing my normal behavior, he relaxed and ate 2 helpings. As I watched his shameless mouth move, I smiled coldly to myself. Eat up. It'll be the last warm meal you ever get from your wife. From that day on, I became an actress. I pretended not to see them flirting at the restaurant. I would even say things like, "You must be so tired from running the business. I'll try to be a better wife," to put him at ease. I needed them to get bolder, to leave more evidence. Behind the scenes, I was meticulously preparing for war. I secretly backed up all the security camera footage from the restaurant and consulted with a top divorce attorney. When the lawyer saw the evidence I had collected, he whistled, "Ma'am, you have more than enough here. With this, we can not only sue the mistress for damages, but you'll get the maximum possible alimony. Best of all, you have his own words about taking over the business and assets. That's a huge advantage. You need to be strong." "Don't worry," I said. My tears have all dried up. I'm going to make him regret this down to his very bones. The quiet before the storm passed. My husband and Jessica, acting as if they'd already won, became more and more brazen. All the while, I was quietly preparing to bury them in the grave they had dug for themselves. I told my mother that he was planning to take the restaurant, which was legally in my name. She was ready to tear him limb from limb, but I stopped her. "Mom, just wait a little longer. We need to take them down in one clean shot. If we make a move now, it could backfire. When I give you the signal, we act." All the preparations were complete. All that was left was to wait for them to walk into the trap. The calm shattered in an instant. It was a Monday, the restaurant's day off. My husband left in the morning, humming a tune. I'm going to the gym and sauna. Feeling a bit stiff. A little while later, my phone rang. It was him. "Hey, I need to talk to you. Meet me at the coffee shop downtown." Now, his voice had a strange, theatrical gravity to it. I knew. This is it. He's making his move. I took a deep breath, slipped the small recording device I prepared into my pocket, and clenched my fist to stop them from shaking. When I walked into the coffee shop, I saw something I hadn't expected. I thought he'd be alone, but Jessica was sitting right next to him, her arm linked through his. She even had the audacity to smile at me, a picture of leisurely confidence. I fought back a bitter laugh and sat down across from them. "What's this? Why is Jessica here? I thought you were at the gym. Are you two on a date?" I feigned ignorance, but my husband just tilted his chin up arrogantly. "Look, let's not beat around the bush. I'm just going to say it. How much will it take for you to sign the divorce papers?" He tossed a manila envelope onto the table. It landed with a thud that felt like a slap across my face. Inside were divorce papers. "We're just not compatible anymore. I'm starting a new life with Jessica, so just sign the papers without a fuss." The sheer nerve of it. The cheater was the one demanding a divorce with such confidence. Jessica, sitting beside him, added her 2 cents. "Ma'am, you must have known. We're in love. You know, our feelings are genuine, right? It's time to let him go. It's for the best. For everyone. Love. Genuine." The words they spewed so easily were words they weren't worthy of even uttering. I felt sick to my stomach, but I had to remain calm. I had to record every word. "Love? You're calling an affair love? While I'm standing right here, you two collude to kick me out? Do you really think that makes any sense?" As I shot back, my husband scoffed, pulled out his wallet, and slapped a cashier's check on the table. "Don't be so pathetic. You think I won't give you a settlement? Here, take it. It's $50,000. I'm being generous, so take the money and let's end this cleanly." To think he could put a price on my youth, on my devotion. I was speechless. $50,000? Are you kidding me? You think I'm going to sign those papers for that? God, you're so greedy. Look, I built this restaurant. It was my recipe, my skill that made it a success. What did you do? Sit at the counter and count money? If you have any conscience, you'll just walk away. And don't worry, I'll be leaving your mother's dump of a building. We're going to open a bigger, better place somewhere else. His delusion was off the charts. He had no idea why customers lined up, what the real secret to our success was. He genuinely believed he was some great chef and brilliant entrepreneur. Jessica leaned her head on his shoulder, purring. Honey, she's just greedy. Just give her a little more. We need to open our new place soon. I hate that gloomy old building anyway. You're right, beautiful. You're always right. All right, Sarah, I'm being very generous here. I'll give you $100,000. That's my final offer. Not a penny more. Now sign. He pushed the divorce papers toward me as if he were bestowing a great favor. Their arrogance was sickening, but a part of me almost felt sorry for them. They were like moths flying into a flame, completely oblivious to reality. I checked to make sure the recorder was still running and put on a serious face. Are you really so sure? You think you can run the restaurant without me? Have you forgotten that the business is in my name? Don't you remember whose name is on the business license? At my question, he laughed dismissively. Don't make me laugh. The name on the paper doesn't mean anything. I'm the real owner. I did the cooking. I ran the place. You were just a figurehead. Even legally, my contribution is much greater. And anyway, even if it's in your name, I can just leave and open the exact same restaurant. Customers will follow my cooking, not your name on a piece of paper. That's right, Jessica chimed in. Stop waving that license around. That place will go bankrupt without him anyway. Okay, I thought. If that's how you want to play it, then the gloves are off. I was secretly ecstatic. I couldn't wait to see how useful this conversation would be in court, and how happy my mother would be. Fine. If that's what you want, I'll sign. I'll do exactly as you wish. I don't need your 50,000 or your 100,000. I don't want a dime. You two go ahead. Live your best life. But don't come crying to me later. There will be no second chances. I took my personal seal out of my bag and, without hesitation, stamped the divorce papers. My husband and Jessica stared, their eyes wide. They must have expected me to cry, beg, or scream for more money. They never imagined I would sign so willingly. Huh, you're taking this better than I thought. Should have done this sooner, my husband said, grinning as he collected the papers. He and Jessica even high-fived. Babe, we're finally free, she squealed. This is awesome. You're the best, babe. They cheered so loudly that people in the cafe turned to stare, but they didn't care. I calmly stood up and gathered my things. I couldn't stand to be in the same room as these two pieces of trash any longer. Well, congratulations on your freedom. I just wonder how long it will last. As I was about to leave, my husband shouted at my back. Sorry to break it to you, but don't even think about showing your face at the restaurant from tomorrow. I'm taking over as the real owner. The staff is on my side. Don't come making a scene. Just get lost. With his final curse echoing behind me, I walked out of the cafe. The cool air hit my face, and instead of tears, I felt an incredible sense of relief. It's finally over. No, it's just beginning. I turned off the recorder in my pocket, took out my phone, and texted my lawyer. Evidence secured. Please proceed tomorrow, as planned. Then, I called my mother. The moment I heard her voice, the words I'd been holding back burst out. Mom, I signed the papers. Now it's time to wipe them off the face of the earth. Are you ready? My mother's firm voice came through the phone. You bet I am. You've been through enough, my girl. Now it's my turn. Let's see how their faces look tomorrow morning. It's going to be quite a show. The walk home felt lighter than air. By tomorrow morning, everything would change. My husband would learn, in the most painful way possible, that the great success he was so proud of was nothing but a house of cards. The day of reckoning arrived. The two who had so triumphantly demanded a divorce the day before could never have imagined that their brilliant future would crumble to dust overnight. I woke up early, carefully applied my makeup, and chose the most professional-looking suit from my closet. I looked like I was heading to an important business meeting. Then, along with my mother and the people we had arranged to be there, I headed to the restaurant. At 10 a.m., we saw my husband and Jessica approaching to open up for the day. They were arm in arm, humming, acting like newlyweds. He was carrying takeout coffees, and she had her head resting on his shoulder, giggling. Babe, from today on, this is really your restaurant. It feels so good not to have to worry about that old hag's glares anymore. Of course, I'm the real boss now. Let's have a killer day today, and I'll buy my Jessica a new designer bag. As they chatted and approached the restaurant, their steps came to an abrupt halt. Their humming turned into screams, and for good reason. The restaurant's metal shutter was pulled down tight, and a thick, heavy chain was wrapped around it, secured with a massive padlock. But that wasn't all. In the center of the shutter, A bright yellow notice from a law firm was posted, looking menacing. Notice of lease termination. Order to vacate and prohibition of unlawful occupancy. The words, printed in large, red letters, were enough to make anyone's knees weak. Unable to process the situation, my husband just stood there, stunned. Then his face turned beet red, and with a trembling hand, he called me. I was watching from around the corner, and I let it ring a few times before answering casually. Hello? What is this? What the hell is going on? Has your mother lost her mind? What's with the chains and these stupid notices? We're a little behind on rent, and this is how you treat family? You get down here and open this door right now. His voice on the phone was laced with a fear that went beyond anger. I let out a small laugh, signaled to my mother and the two police officers with us, and walked out from the alley to confront them. Family? Yesterday, you made it very clear we were strangers. Once those divorce papers are signed, we're not family anymore. So, I'm handling this professionally. Legally, at the sound of my voice, he and Jessica spun around in shock. Standing beside me were two uniformed police officers and my mother, her arms crossed, looking furious. My husband flinched when he saw the police, but quickly recovered, starting to rave like a madman. Officer, isn't this obstruction of business? The owner is preventing me from entering my own restaurant. Please, make them take this down immediately. That's when my mother stepped forward, jabbing a finger in his face. Her voice was a roar, filled with all the anger she had suppressed for so long. Obstruction? Who's obstructing whom? You little punk, what did you promise me when you moved in here? You said you'd pay the rent on time, even if the sky fell down. I put up with you for my daughter's sake, to save you from humiliation. And what do? A divorce? You make my daughter cry tears of blood, and you think you can just keep running your business in my building? My mother pulled a sheaf of papers from her coat and threw them in his face. Read this, you thief. Under commercial tenancy law, if a tenant is 3 months behind on rent, the landlord can terminate the lease immediately. Have you paid rent properly even once in the last 6 months? You strut around bragging about how well you're doing, but you haven't paid me a single dime. The lease is legally terminated. Now pack your things and get out. My mother's factual assault left him speechless, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. It was true. As soon as he started making money, he'd bought a luxury car, but had conveniently forgotten to pay his mother-in-law, figuring she'd let it slide because they were family. That mistake had just cost him everything. But he wasn't done yet. Fine. I'll pay the back rent. I'll pay it right now. Just open the door. And all the equipment and furniture in there, I paid for that with my own money. I have a right to use my own property. It was my turn. I smiled coldly, held up my phone, and showed him the screen, a confirmation from the state's business portal. You seem to be under a serious misconception. Do you remember whose name is on the business license? You were so scared of your bad credit that you begged me to put the business in my name, remember? As the legal owner, I officially filed to dissolve the business this morning, and I've already terminated all the employees. So, you're not the owner, you're just an unemployed cook. What? Dissolved? And one more thing. I noticed both your and Jessica's food handler's permits have expired. You've been operating a food establishment with expired permits. Do you know that's grounds for an immediate shutdown? I did you a favor by closing the business before we got hit with a massive fine. You should be thanking me. The color drained from his face. In his delusion of being a big-shot owner, he neglected the most basic legal and administrative duties. His ignorance was his downfall. Jessica, standing beside him, started shaking his arm in a panic. Babe, what does she mean? Dissolved? We can't do business? Like a cornered rat, he lost all reason. He started kicking the shutter, screaming at the top of his lungs. This is bullshit. I built this place. This is my blood and sweat. You bitch. Open this door. Open it before I tear it down. As he grabbed the chains and started shaking them violently, one of the officers stepped in and expertly twisted his arm behind his back. Sir, what do you think you're doing? You're under arrest for obstruction of business and destruction of property. You're coming with us. Let me go. Let go. I'm the owner. This is my restaurant. Pinned to the ground, he howled like a caged animal. A crowd of neighbors had gathered to watch the pathetic spectacle. Jessica just stood there, wringing her hands, completely useless. For the final blow, I leaned down close to him and said quietly, "Oh, by the way, you seem to be feeling pretty confident about your money. You might want to check your bank account. still pinned by the police. He struggled to pull his phone from his pocket and check the business account balance. He stared at the screen, then rubbed his eyes in disbelief. My money. Where's all my money? It wasn't your money. It was my money, in an account under my name. Right before I dissolved the business, I withdrew all the operating funds and profits and had the account frozen. Sorry. Looks like I was a little faster than you. His eyes went vacant. The restaurant, the reputation, the money he trusted in it had all vanished in an instant. His sandcastle had been washed away by the tide. What are we going to do? There's no money left, he mumbled, looking at Jessica with a dazed expression. But her face was already a mask of cold indifference. A broke man was of no value to her. I took my mother's hand, and we walked away from the chaotic scene. Behind us, I could hear him pleading, Honey, Sarah, I was wrong. Please, just open the door. But I didn't look back. Go use that masterful cooking of yours somewhere else, I said over my shoulder. But in my building, in my former business, there's nothing left for you. At my final words, he collapsed onto the pavement and began to sob uncontrollably. His wails were so pitiful that even passers-by stopped to stare. But this wasn't the end. The hell that he and his mistress were about to endure had only just begun. After being released from the police station, my ex-husband walked around with a fire in his eyes, like some kind of revolutionary hero. Despite being penniless, his pride was still colossal. He vowed to make a comeback and rub it in my and my mother's faces. He went to his own mother and cleaned out every last penny of her life savings money she'd earned hunched over a stall at a flea market for decades. Mom, I'm going to hit it big this time, and you'll live like a queen. You trust me, right? You know your son's talent, he'd said. And his mother, a fool for her son, fell for the same old line again. On top of that, he took out high-interest loans from every predatory lender he could find. Rumor had it he even had his mistress take out cash advances on her credit cards. So much for their epic romance. When they needed cash, all pretense of dignity went out the window. With that scraped-together money, he opened a new restaurant just 2 blocks away from ours. A deliberate act of defiance. The name was a joke, the real original beef stew. The sign was gaudy, gold-plated, and screamed tackiness. The interior was even worse. You'd think he was building a palace. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers. It looked more like a cheap nightclub than a stew diner. On opening day, he had a row of congratulatory wreaths out front and a banner with a truly outrageous message. The real owner, kicked out by scheming in-laws. The true taste that won't bow to a greedy landlord's tyranny. This is the real original. Don't be fooled by imitations. He was parading around town painting me as some kind of evil villain. At first, I was furious. I was hurt by the whispers of the people passing by. But my mother just snorted. Let him bark. A dog that barks doesn't bite. He calls himself the original? Please. The food has to be original. Not just the sign. Just you watch. He won't last a month. My mother's prediction was spot on. I spent a week renovating my place and put up a new sign, The Good Wife's Diner. It was direct, and people were intrigued. Just from the name, they'd say, "Oh, there must be a story here." Without me having to explain a thing. The name said it all. Customers would come in and give me a thumbs up. You go, girl. We're rooting for you. The battle of the 2 restaurants began. My ex's place had a brief surge of customers due to the novelty, but within a week, his true colors started to show. Reviews from people who'd eaten there started pouring in. He calls this original? The stew is so watery. It tastes like beef-flavored water. No depth at all. And the cornbread is from a box mix. I could tell from the first bite. It was dry and chemical tasting. I had to spit it out. I saw the owner smoking in the kitchen alley and then come back in without washing his hands. His apron was filthy. I completely lost my appetite. Meanwhile, the Good Wife's Diner was packed. My rich, slow-simmered stew, a new recipe I'd perfected, served with my mother's fresh, spicy cheddar jalapeno cornbread, had customers raving. Now this is the stuff. This is the real original. Ma'am, can we get more cornbread? I wish I could take a whole loaf home. When he started losing the battle of taste, my ex got even nastier. He went around town spreading rumors that I had stolen his recipe, that my mother had threatened him. But there are no secrets in a small town, and justice has a way of finding the light. A post appeared on the local community Facebook page, titled, "The Shocking Truth About the Real, Original Beef Stew." Hey everyone, don't go to that new real original place. Turns out the owner cheated on his wife with a waitress at their old restaurant, tried to kick his wife out, and got kicked out instead. Oh my God. No way. Is that young woman at the counter the waitress? Yes. They have no shame. The original owner, the good wife, is a saint for putting up with it. We shouldn't support a business run by cheaters. And the food is terrible anyway. The boxed cornbread was the last straw. I'm not feeding my kids that junk. The rumors spread like wildfire, and soon a boycott was in effect. Even during lunch hour, his restaurant was a ghost town. The few customers who wandered in were out-of-towners who didn't know the story. And after one taste, they never came back. Then, my mother delivered the financial knockout punch. Through her lawyer, she sent him a notice, a lawsuit for unjust enrichment and damages. She was suing him for all the back rent and utilities he had dodged for years by playing the family card, with the maximum legal interest applied. Since there was no formal lease, it was actually a stronger case. The lawsuit argued he had to repay all the profits he had gained by occupying the building for free. When he saw the amount she was suing for, he nearly fainted. The figure was astronomical. With no business, a mountain of debt, and now a massive lawsuit. The atmosphere in his restaurant was like a funeral home. His mistress also started showing her true colors. The little fox who once cooed "I only need love" turned into a vicious harpy when the money ran out. One night, I was passing his restaurant and heard shouting from inside. I peeked through the window. "Kevin, what is this? You said we were going to be rich? You said I'd be a boss's wife. There's not a single customer, just endless calls from debt collectors. What about my credit card bills?" She shrieked, slamming her hand on the counter. Kevin was huddled in a chair, holding his head. "Just wait. It's just a slow start. Once the rumors die down, customers will come back. You said you believed in me. Can't you just be patient?" "Patient? Until when? My credit cards are maxed out. Are you going to take responsibility when my credit is ruined? And you expect me to wait tables? Do you think I came here to serve food and wash dishes? I'm stressed out of my mind, and you're making it worse. If you'd just be a little charming like you used to be, maybe customers would come back. All you do is sit at the counter and play on your phone. Why are you blaming me? You useless loser. You're the one who failed. I bet my entire life on you, and this is what I get. A train wreck." It was quite a show. The epic love story had crumbled the moment the money disappeared. It was so satisfying I wanted to grab a bag of popcorn and watch. Their screams and accusations were music to my ears. To make matters worse, the few staff he had couldn't stand his temper tantrums and started quitting one by one. With their paychecks bouncing, there was no reason to stay. "I quit. I'll be filing a complaint with the Department of Labor for my unpaid wages," one said. "Me too. I can't take your attitude anymore. And your girlfriend's entitlement is unbearable. She doesn't lift a finger, but barks orders all day." After the mass exodus, it was just the two of them. They couldn't possibly manage the large space alone. He was flustered in the kitchen, and she kept mixing up orders, getting yelled at by the few customers they had. Just 3 months after its grand opening, the real original beef stew became a neighborhood eyesore. Dust gathered on the windows, and the door was plastered with red foreclosure notices and collection letters. He didn't even have money for the electricity bill, and a shut-off notice was taped to the glass. But that wasn't the end. The real climax of their tragedy was delivered by the mistress herself. My ex-husband was about to learn the painful meaning of being stabbed in the back by someone you trust. He was about to find out how terrifying a woman can be when love turns to greed, and how bitter that betrayal tastes. During those hellish days, hounded by creditors, my ex-husband disappeared for a few days. In his absence, his mistress hatched a brilliant plan. Realizing he was never going to make her a boss's wife, her sharp mind pivoted to one thing: cutting her losses and making a quick buck. While he was in hiding, she went to real estate agents to see if she could get the security deposit back. But with liens on the property, it was impossible. So, she turned her attention to the restaurant's interior. In the dead of night, she called a moving truck. She proceeded to load up every single valuable item in the restaurant. The multi-thousand-dollar commercial refrigerator, the custom soup kettles he was so proud of, even the sacks of flour and spices. She cleaned the place out and sold everything for pennies on the dollar online. And that wasn't all. For her grand finale, she opened the cash register. Inside was the last of his emergency cash, $3,000 he had hidden from the debt collectors. It was his last lifeline. She took the money with a bright smile. The police officer who later reviewed the security footage told me, "This woman was literally dancing as she emptied the register." The next morning, my ex-husband returned to the restaurant, looking haggard. He couldn't believe his eyes. The door was wide open, but the inside was completely empty. It looked like it had been bombed. A few tables were left, but the kitchen was stripped bare. Not even a single spoon remained. What? What happened? Was there a robbery? Jessica? Jessica! He yelled, running around like a madman. But all he found was a crumpled note on the empty counter. With a shaking hand, he picked it up. Old man, I'm out. To be honest, I was only with you for the money. But you're broke, so what's the point? And, babe, take a look in the mirror. Have you no shame? It made me want to puke having to pretend to like a washed-up old guy like you. Consider this money my severance pay and emotional damages. Don't ever contact me again. I've already changed my number. Jessica, you bitch. He collapsed to the floor, howling like a wounded animal. The woman he thought was his great love, his last shred of pride, had betrayed him and robbed him blind. He was nothing but an empty shell. His cries were so loud that the whole neighborhood came out to watch, shaking their heads. Serves him right, leaving his good wife for that. You reap what you sow. With nowhere to go and not a penny to his name, my ex-husband finally swallowed what was left of his pride and showed up at my restaurant with his mother. It was a rainy evening. We were about to close when the door opened and two figures, looking like homeless people, shuffled in. I was about to ask them to leave when I realized who they were. They walked up to me and immediately fell to their knees on the floor. Sarah, please, you have to help us, my former mother-in-law cried, grabbing the hem of my pants. The once proud, sharp-tongued woman looked like she had aged 10 years in just a few months. But her shamelessness was still intact. Sarah, your first husband is always the best. The old sayings are true. My son was just possessed for a little while. He made a mistake. All men do. Can't you find it in your big heart to forgive him just once? Let's get back together. Please. I had to laugh. The woman who had been hell-bent on stealing my assets was now talking about family. My ex-husband was also on his knees, bowing and scraping. Honey, I was crazy. I'm a monster. I let that little fox bewitch me, and I abandoned you. Please, just forgive me one more time. If you take me back, I'll be your slave for life. I'll wash dishes, clean toilets. I'll do anything. Please. A slave? What can you even do? Break dishes and snap at customers. We don't need that kind of slave here. My cold rejection didn't deter them. Please, just give me a chance. We have nowhere to go. We got kicked out of a homeless shelter. We haven't eaten in 2 days. Their whining was starting to annoy the remaining customers. I was about to call the police when a booming voice came from the kitchen. Make way. It was my mother. In her hands was a large plastic basin filled with coarse rock salt. A fire burned in her eyes. You shameless creatures. How dare you crawl back in here? Without a moment's hesitation, she flung the entire basin of salt at their faces. Here, eat some salt and get lost. Don't bring your bad luck in here and ruin my daughter's future. Get out. The coarse salt pelted their faces and bodies. Ow, it stings. My eyes. My eyes. Mom, what are you doing? They rolled on the floor, screaming in pain. The sight was so ridiculous that the customers erupted in applause and cheers. Go, Mom. That's awesome. That's what I'm talking about. That's better than TV. Don't waste good salt on them. Call the cops. The restaurant suddenly had a party atmosphere. My mother, still not satisfied, grabbed a broom and started hitting their backs. Don't you ever show your faces here again. If I see you one more time, I'll pour boiling hot stew on you. I used the opportunity to call the police. Yes, hello? 2 people have come into my restaurant and are causing a disturbance. Can you send someone quickly? Soon, the sound of a siren filled the air. The officers who arrived pulled the salt-covered pair to their feet. As he was being dragged out, my ex-husband made one last, pathetic plea. Honey, don't leave me. I have nowhere to go. Honey, who's your honey? We're strangers. Officer, I'd like to file for a restraining order as well. I want to make sure they can never come near me again. As I watched them being shoved into the back of the police car, I finally let out a long, deep breath. The exhausting, toxic chapter of my life was finally, truly over. After that day, my ex-husband's downfall accelerated. With no money left from the restaurant and his mistress gone, he was unable to handle his massive debts and officially became bankrupt. He fled town to escape the loan sharks. I later heard he was working as a day laborer on a construction site in some faraway state hauling bricks. I imagine he's getting yelled at by his foreman, eating a tear-soaked sandwich, and finally learning the value of the hard, honest labor he once looked down on. And what about the great love, the mistress? She thought she had gotten away clean, but she underestimated the police. She was arrested after trying to sell the stolen equipment online. At the police station, my ex-husband and his mistress reportedly got into a physical fight, screaming at each other. "You made me do it, and it was all your idea." Their pact of love dissolved into a muddy brawl, each trying to drag the other down with them. Could there be a more perfect ending? After a long winter, spring finally came, to my life, and to my diner. The miserable divorce proceedings finally ended with a ruling in my favor. The moment I walked out of the courthouse, the sky was so brilliantly blue it brought tears to my eyes. When the judge said, "Petition granted," I felt the weight of my ex-husband's debts and our toxic history lift from my shoulders. I was legally and emotionally free. With the lawsuit against his mistress also settled in my favor, I felt as light as a feather. "Oh, my baby, you went through so much. You're finally my daughter again," my mother said, waiting for me outside. She stroked my face with her rough hand, and its familiar warmth was the most comforting thing in the world. For so long, she had avoided the restaurant, not wanting to cause trouble for her son-in-law, only sneaking in before dawn to drop off the cornbread like a thief in the night. But now, there was no one to hide from. The very next day, my mother walked proudly through the front door of the diner. She wore red rubber gloves and a white sanitary cap, looking like a five-star general. "All right, everyone. As of today, I am the executive director of cornbread production. This is my building and my daughter's business, and I'm going to take care of it. Now, let's get to work." Executive Director of Cornbread Production. The title suited her perfectly. "Ma'am, can I get some of that cornbread to go? The stew is amazing, but this cornbread is a masterpiece." Customers couldn't stop praising it. Soon, people were driving in from other states just to taste it. That's when I made a big decision. It was time to start a cornbread business. "Mom, let's create our own brand. How about the Good Wife's Cornbread?" "Oh, I love that name. It's got a nice ring to it. If my daughter wants to do it, then let's do it." The Good Wife's Cornbread Mix launched online and was an instant sensation. The website crashed from the traffic. We were getting so many orders that my mother and I were up all night mixing ingredients. But even though our bodies ached, our hearts soared. Watching the numbers in our bank account grow, I felt a deep sense of validation. I had proven that I could not only survive without him, but thrive. Meanwhile, the updates I heard about my ex-husband were increasingly pathetic. Bankrupt and on the run, he had injured his back at a construction site and could no longer work. With no money for medical bills, he was living in shelters until he was kicked out. The last I heard, he was getting by on meals from a local soup kitchen. A neighbor who volunteered there told me, "You won't believe who I saw at the soup kitchen yesterday. Your ex-husband. He was a wreck, wearing a torn jacket, hunched in a corner, just sobbing into his bowl of soup. I guess it must have reminded him of the stew from your place." Hearing that, I felt a strange sense of melancholy. More than feeling triumphant, it just made me think about how unpredictable life is. A simple bowl of stew, something he had taken for granted, was now his lifeline. It was a bitter irony. His former mistress's fate was no different. After losing the lawsuit to me and being ordered to pay tens of thousands in damages, she took out loans from loan sharks to pay me and was now drowning in her own sea of debt. The designer clothes she once wore were now replaced by the shackles of her own making. While they were paying for their sins, I focused on healing. I didn't just want to make money. I wanted to use it for something meaningful. I remembered the profound loneliness and hunger I felt as a child, eating instant noodles alone in a cold room. I wanted to make sure other children didn't have to experience that. So, I started the Love on Wheels food truck. Every weekend, I use a portion of the restaurant's profits to serve free, hot beef stew to underprivileged children and the elderly in our community. "Thank you, ma'am." "Oh, thank you, Sarah. Because of you, I get a proper hot meal." Watching the children blow on their steaming bowls of stew, their faces full of happiness, I felt the holes in my own heart begin to fill. I never knew that serving someone a warm meal and seeing their joy could be so fulfilling. One night, after closing, my mother and I were sitting down for a late dinner. She suddenly put down her fork, her eyes welling up with tears. "Sarah," she began. "Yeah, Mom? What's wrong? Are you sick?" "No, I'm just so sorry. I think I let you grow up too lonely. I was so focused on making money trying to be both a mother and a father, that I never made sure my own child had a hot meal on the table. That's my biggest regret. You were so desperate for a warm family that you gave your heart to that man and got hurt. It's all my fault. Thick tears rolled down her cheeks and splashed onto the table. Seeing my mother, who had always been so strong, look so broken, my own heart ached. I realized she had been carrying this guilt her entire life, blaming herself for my unhappiness. I got up and hugged her tightly. The familiar smell of pain cream and hard work on her back was so comforting. Mom, what are you talking about? I was never lonely. I always knew how hard you worked for me. How could I ever blame you? And meeting him was my mistake, not your fault. In fact, because of you, I've become this strong. Look at me now. I'm a successful business owner, and I took down the bad guys. Your daughter, Sarah, can stand on her own 2 feet. You're right. My daughter is amazing. She sobbed into my shoulder. You did your best, Mom. You're the best mother in the world. Let's forget the past and just be happy. The two of us. Okay? She cried like a child in my arms. That night, we held each other and washed away years of pain and sorrow with our tears. And we made a promise. From now on, we would live for ourselves. A year later, another miracle happened in our lives. We completely renovated our old, rundown 3-story building. The building that used to leak when it rained and was drafty in the winter was now a modern, beautiful structure. The first and second floors are still the Good Wife's Diner, with lines out the door every day. The third floor is our sanctuary, a home just for my mother and me, a living room filled with sunlight, an elevator for my mother's bad knees, and the large, open kitchen we always dreamed of. It's more than a house. It's our fortress, protecting us from the storms of the world. Right now, I'm sitting at the dining table in our third-floor home after a long day at work. A gentle spring rain is falling outside. On the table is a bowl of fresh, spicy coleslaw my mom just made, and 2 bowls of my rich, creamy beef stew. All right, let's eat before it gets cold. Okay, Mom. You eat a lot too. There are no fancy dishes, but it's the most perfect meal in the world. 1 spoonful of the steaming hot stew warms my entire body. Looking at my mother across the table, eating with gusto, a smile spreads across my face. I used to believe that I needed a husband, children, a proper family, to be happy. I chased after a hollow dream to fill a void, and I paid for it with a broken heart. But now I know, true happiness isn't some far-off destination. I may not have a husband, but I have the most dependable person in the world by my side, my mother, who believes in and supports me no matter what. And I have a business I built with my own hands, and the joy of giving back. Isn't this a real family? Isn't this the warmest meal in the world? To all of you out there, if you're feeling lonely or going through a hard time, take a look around you. You might find someone who truly cares for you closer than you think. And most importantly, please love yourself first. From my experience, I've learned that you have to love yourself before you can cook up a truly delicious life. Thank you for listening to my turbulent, but ultimately happy story. I hope your tables are always filled with warmth and happiness. Goodbye. Well, what did you all think of Sarah's incredible story of reversal and revenge? It was a story that truly makes you want to cheer. I want to give a round of applause to Sarah's resilience, for not breaking under the weight of her husband's betrayal and her in-laws' contempt, and for rising to even greater success. More than anything, the greatest source of strength in her journey was the love of her mother. The image of her mother, hunched over in the early morning hours, making cornbread for her daughter, and the final scene of her standing up with a basin of salt to protect her. It was both deeply moving and incredibly satisfying. This story is a powerful reminder that true happiness isn't found in fancy appearances or the approval of others, but in the love of that one person who truly believes in you and in the will to stand up for yourself.